The movie is The Long Walk, which was written by JT Mollner and adapted from the novel by Stephen King and directed by Francis Lawrence. The film follows Ray Garrity, an 18-year-old kid living in a dystopian future who wins a lottery to compete in The Long Walk, a grueling, high-stakes contest where a single young man from each state must continuously walk at least 3 miles per hour or he will be shot and killed. The competition promises fortune for the victor, but the contest has no finish line and everyone except the winner will die, forcing Ray to dig deep in order to keep the blistering pace or meet his untimely end. Stephen King is an incredibly talented writer, and I love a lot of the movie adaptations of his books, like The Shining, The Shawshank Redemption, and Misery, for example, which is why it pains me to say that I felt like The Long Walk was overall just kind of mediocre. The plot was incredibly straightforward, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but I just felt like there should have been more to it than there was. For example, the deaths in the film almost entirely came in the forms that you would expect them to from a competition like this. The contestants get tired, they get hurt, they get shot trying to run away. That's really mostly it. You would think that there would be more infighting or sabotage amongst the competitors, or a bending of the rules for their own advantage. But there really wasn't any of that. The story was largely as linear as that road that they're walking on is. I kept thinking that something unexpected was coming down the line. It even felt like at times the movie was hinting that this iteration of the competition wouldn't go like it usually does. But it really did go exactly as it was described the entire time. Nothing really ever happened that was outside the norm. The monotony of the plot was easily my biggest issue with the film. But second to that was the lack of depth and absence of any real growth or transformation for most of the characters. The only character that really had any sort of change was Peter, and that change was pretty abrupt and fairly short lived. I also feel like when you have a movie that is essentially the same thing for the entire film, like young men walking on a country road for the entirety of the film, it becomes increasingly important to be diverse with the camera. And I just didn't feel like this movie did a good job of that. The majority of the scenes looked largely the same, with very little variation when it came to lighting, blocking, and shot selection. And their environment was mostly unchanging as well, which even further added to the problem, which I think would be less noticeable or less important if the character interactions were more compelling and more interesting, but I just didn't really feel like that was the case. The dialogue was often clunky and felt kind of unnatural at times. And that's so shocking because the screenplay was written by JT Mollner, who wrote and directed Strange Darling, which I absolutely loved. But this movie just couldn't be more different in that regard. The only character who I really bought 100% was Peter, and that's just the unbelievable talent of David Jonsson doing all of the heavy lifting there. I think where I felt a noticeable shift in the movie was in the third act, when Peter finally revealed some of his emotional depth and gave a monologue that made me feel deeply emotional. I think the third act of the film is really what makes the movie worth watching. David Jonsson is fantastic the entire film, but he gets the opportunity to shine even brighter later on in the movie, and he proceeds to give a performance that almost single-handedly saves the film, in my opinion. And speaking of great acting, I was absolutely floored at Judy Greer's phenomenal performance in the film. She played the very limited role of Ray Garrity's mother, but when she was on screen, she absolutely stole the show and was the epitome of a grieving, panicked, distraught mother. I had no idea she had that in her bag because I really only knew her from Arrested Development, but she was truly incredible in the film. And for the record, no, I don't think it was all bad. It actually had some really good components within it, including, as I mentioned, some great acting performances, some incredibly tragic and jarring deaths, and it maintained steady tension throughout the entire runtime. Each death was surprisingly very hard to watch, and it really didn't get any easier as the film went on. I was surprised at how intensely I felt each of the deaths in the movie. And in large part because of how intense the deaths in the movie are, it does a good job of building and maintaining suspense and tension throughout the movie. But unfortunately, it felt like that tension was somewhat wasted because the crescendo at the end of the film felt lackluster, and the final closing shot of the film felt played out. Overall, this movie was a bit disappointing to me, but there were bright spots that I truly did enjoy, including spectacular acting performances in the film, especially from David Jonsson and Judy Greer, the intensity of the jarring, horrific deaths in the film, and the solid, near constant tension that was maintained throughout the film's runtime. This one wasn't for me, but from what most reviews say, I think I'm in the minority, so I highly recommend you go out and see this one in theaters and decide for yourself if you like it. I honestly hope that you disagree with me. So go watch The Long Walk. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, please like the video, and add a comment letting me know what you thought of this movie or what movie you think I should review next. I put out a movie review each week, so subscribe to stay tuned. Thanks, y'all.